welcome to Scrollin', episode number 80. I'm Ket. Davius is on vacation this week with his family. How nice for him. But in his place, we have a special guest, Werewolf main extraordinaire, Ufidnar guild leader, and all-around good dude, my friend Skoomah. How you doing, Skoomah?
Hey, Ket. How's it going? Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Did I pronounce Ufidnar correctly? Is that how you say the guild name?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, Ufidnar.
Ufidnar. Well, I appreciate you being here. You're helping me out a lot just so I don't feel like I'm talking to myself here. And I've always enjoyed talking to you on Discord and in guild chats and stuff, and I've thought about having you on for a while. So just to give listeners an idea of who we're dealing with here, I thought I'd just ask you a few questions, and we'll go from there. Sound good?
Sounds great, yeah.
Question number 1. What attracted you to ESO, and what keeps you playing?
Well, I got hooked into Elder Scrolls, back in 2012 when I played Skyrim, and that was my first introduction to the universe and everything. And
yeah, same here.
And that was just such an amazing game. It's so immersive, and then I went online and I watched a bunch of lore videos. I got hooked into the lore and the universe and all the Daedric's princes and everything. And then when a couple years after that, when ESO came out, as the MMO, it was just a natural thing to just check it out and get hooked,
Had you played any MMOs before?
I have, yeah. I played World of Warcraft for about 5 years before that, so I was already in MMO space, and I really enjoyed it and everything. So when ESO came out, it was a great next game to play.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's pretty much me too. I played Skyrim, and I basically just wanted more Skyrim, and ESO was the only kind of thing available that wasn't an older game, So I just jumped in and started playing it as a single player game for the longest time, and just gradually kind of started getting into the MMO aspects over time. All right, next question. This is just for my own personal curiosity. It's kind of a running gag on this show that I don't like werewolves. I don't like. They're just not appealing to me. I've never played one. I don't want to play one. You're a werewolf main, so my question is, why werewolf?
So number one, really, it's sort of cheesy, but I like it for the RP factor.
Okay, that's valid.
It's just very satisfying to just RP as this beast that rips people's faces off whenever I get a chance to do that. So that's number one, and from the surface, Werewolf seems to be a very kind of basic class in terms of its skill selection and everything, and set options and stuff. But once you get really into it, there is a little bit of a skill gap that you need to sort of fill to be successful with it, which is what I like. It's a little bit of a hard mode, in my opinion. So it's both RP and it's just fun to play.
I think my thing about werewolves, I think the thing that turns me off is the fact that I cannot customize the appearance at all. I think that's the biggest. That's probably 80% of it. So I can't customize my appearance, and really I can't really customize my build. I can try different sets and stuff, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's the big drawback with Werewolf is that it is limited in terms of the sets that you can select and how you can build your character. In terms of group utility, it doesn't really have that in terms of, other classes can put a resto bar on the back bar and heal your team and cross heal and do other things. Maybe do ranged one bar, melee another bar, but
so you got to pull your weight offensively, basically. That's kind of what you have to do.
Exactly. And, most werewolves build super tanky, so they don't really dish out the damage. So in terms of overall utility to the group, if you're not bringing other things like crowd control and just controlling the battlefield with fears and everything, it can be pretty. Yeah. It can be pretty. You can see the drawbacks, pretty well there.
We'll talk about it here in a minute, but we've played in some groups in Battlegrounds lately. I've been on a healer. You've been on your werewolf, and I have found that I very much enjoy healing werewolves. It's super duper fun. I'll talk about why here in just a little bit, but. All right, so, and you're the leader for the Ufidnar Guild, which is a guild we've actually mentioned on this show before. It's a PvP guild, seems Battlegrounds-centric, more or less, but one of our favorite guilds. We like it a lot. You want to just tell us a little bit about the guild and what it's all about?
Sure. The guild was founded at the end of 2020, so we've been around for a little while. We started, we started off as a werewolf guild, and it turns out there's actually not a lot of werewolves out there. So our recruitment was wasn't that great. So somewhere mid last year, we switched over and we went to become an all-purpose PvP guild, and we recruited for Battlegrounds mostly. Who met a lot of our guildmates through Battlegrounds. Would play matches with them and introduce them to the guild and invite them to the guild. And now we're all PvP. We do Cyrodiil, we do Imperial City. Battlegrounds is our bread and butter, and really, it's a great place to meet friends and have a good time with your buddies.
Yeah, it's a very active guild. I like it a lot. Is recruitment ongoing? Like, if people are interested in joining, is there anything they can do to express interest?
Yeah, absolutely. So our guild right now is 500 out of 500, which took us quite a while to get there. It took us, a little more than half a year to get there, but there's still slots that are open. People that go inactive for a little while, take breaks from the game, that go for breaks for a very long time, 6 months plus, and there's always room for more new players to come, and would love to have you.
Cool. So, I guess anyone listening, if you're interested, you can email scrollandpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll patch you through, and we'll see what we can do if there's any openings. Cool, man. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for now. Let's move on and talk about some PvP. So we've done quite a bit of PvP over the last couple of weeks, and you and I think, have played together more than we ever have in the past. In the last couple of weeks, we've grouped up quite a bit. Let's see. It's been you, me, our buddy Uncle Sam. Who, shout out to Uncle Sam. He's in the chat right now, listening in. And then our friend King Nar. And that has been just such an awesome group that we've been playing with. So I've been on my MagCro healer. You've been on your Oakensoul, like, busted werewolf. King Nar is on an Oakensoul Dragon Knight using Plague Break. And then Sam was switching back and forth between his Necro and his Magsork, but I think our best matches were him on his Magsork. And that was just a really awesome team comp. I like having you and King. You guys are both kind of these tanky bruisers that were, like, hyper aggressive, getting right up on the front line, like taking a lot of damage, but also dishing out a bunch of AoE pressure as well. And then I'm keeping everybody alive and tossing out a lot of crowd control at the enemies and debuffing them and everything. And then Sam's just hanging back with the Sork, just snatching up those executes and helping out with heals with his Matriarch. This seemed to be a really, really good team comp. We had a lot of success with that. Super fun.
Yeah, and that really is, I believe, like, the best comps in BGs is to have, 1.5 people worth of heals. So Sam was, I believe, off healing.
Yeah.
Kat was the full healer, and then King and I in the front lines were just going ham. And what better to have than a busted werewolf and a busted DK with Oakensoul on the front lines.
Yeah, and you were using Rush of Agony, right?
Yeah, so on my werewolf, I like to run Rush of Agony. I leap in, which procs Rush of Agony, pulls all of the enemies together into a concentrated spot, and then I fear them in place. They're stuck, and then the Rush of Agony pops and it blows them up for anywhere from 6 to 12k a pop, and then you just have Sam and King following up with their executes or whatever else damage they got, and most people were dead.
Yeah, Rush of Agony is a set that I've complained about quite a bit on this show, but when you're not on the receiving end of it, it's a great set, and it was perfect because you were pulling them all in and then fearing them, and they're all stuck in place. And King at the same time is throwing his Plague Break on them, like you have them all in one spot, and he can just kind of dish that into all of them, and you guys just kind of get those health bars low, and then there's Sam just snatching those executes up, and man, there's not a lot of teams could do about it. We were kind of dominating there for a while.
Yeah, and Kat, you also, contributed greatly as well. Like, I think your heal is very special and unique in the fact that it really locks people down with your totems and your ice staff, and that does a lot. I've been on the receiving end of that, and I literally can't move in a lot.
Yeah, I'll talk in some detail about my MagCro a little while later. Her build is totally locked in, and it's a very good build. But yeah, she specializes in crowd control and debuffing enemies, and she has heals as well, but that's maybe only a third of the value that she's bringing. She's a fun build. We did run into this one team on one particular night. I don't know if you remember this team or not, but we went up against them, I think, 2 or 3 times on one night, and it was just absolutely demoralizing because they just completely shut us down. I'm pretty sure they were all using Oakensoul because they just never did not have their ultimates running just 24/7. They had this vampire warden that was just always in vampire form and doing sub-assaults and spin-to-wins and just mowing us down. And then they had 2 sorcerers on their team. And the reason I think they were using Oakensoul is because we were never not standing in a negate, just like always. Like they would throw a negate on top of us, we would move out, the other sorc would throw another negate, and we'd move out of that, and the first sorc has his negate ready again, and he throws that on top of us. And it was just the entire match. As a healer with negate on top of you, I can't do anything. King and Sam are both Magicka builds. You have your healing abilities Magicka based, right?
Yeah, it uses Magicka to heal. Yep, that's right.
So it's just, we might get a few seconds of in between negates here and there to kind of catch our breath, but man, for the most part, we were just standing in negates that whole time, and they were coming at us with so much damage. There was just nothing we could do. And, we'd queue up for another match. We'd see that same team and be like, oh, man, here we go again, I guess. Get ready.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the new meta, with the Oakensoul and the major heroism. It just allows people to really make use of their ultimates, right? So get the ultimates back really, really quickly. And you're seeing a lot of folks that, there are certain ultimates that are just better than others. So corrosive armor, Dawnbreaker, negates, all the hard hitting or really strong ones with great utility. You're seeing them pop, affect a match much more frequently.
Yeah, there's a lot of builds that are just kind of really focused on getting that ultimate, and that's what it's all about. Even healers, I've seen some of the most effective healers that all they really are doing is speccing into ultimate regeneration, running Oakensoul, and just keeping that ultimate running constantly. Like Templar healers, they're the Templar healing ultimate, I can't remember the name, but it's a pretty low cost ultimate, and it's super duper strong. And there's that, they changed that one morph recently where you can still move around while you're casting it. And I've just seen some super strong healers that are super duper effective, and that's literally all they're doing is just casting that ultimate over and over. They're hardly doing anything else.
Right, and with Oakensoul, with the 1 bar builds, you can either choose to be like this super hard hitting character that uses your offensive ultimates quite frequently, or you can choose to be a super duper defensive character where you can use your defensive ultimates. So there is a little bit of a drawback with using Oakensoul in terms of having to choose, are you going to be a damage dealer or are you going to be a healer? Whereas on a 2-bar build, you can choose to be a little bit of each, but not as potent, I guess you'd say.
I do kind of like that about Oakensoul, that it does force you to choose, like, okay, am I a healer? Then I need to just be a healer. Or am I a damage dealer? Then I just need to be a damage dealer. You can't do it all. Like most of my builds, I try to do both. I try to have damage and group support. But if you're doing Oakensoul, you just got to pick one or the other and just try to be as good as you can possibly be at that thing. So that's kind of neat.
That is pretty neat. And that's the thing that werewolves have always had to be, right? So we've always had to be these damage dealers. So the mentality is always attack, right? Whereas, now I guess you'd say, quote unquote, the normal classes, they're kind of get into that mentality now, right? Where they have to choose one or the other. And it's kind of cool to see the normal classes, the real classes, really get to, see what it's like, I guess, in a way, to be a werewolf, but not really, right? So, without the fur.
Less fur. We also spent some time in Imperial City, which I hadn't done in way too long. Man, we had such a blast. We had the same group of players, but we switched to different characters. I was on a Magplar. I think you were on a Necro Bomber. Is that right?
Yes, I was on my Necro Bomber with Dark Convergence. Yep.
Yeah, and then I think Sam was still on his Sorc, I'm pretty sure. King was still on his Oaken DK, and then we picked up our buddy Brandon, who joined us, who was on a similar kind of Oaken DK corrosive build. And man, we were just wrecking Imperial City. We went up to like where the city was. We were all on blue, and we saw this red Zerg. I don't know, would you say maybe 15 players or so is what I would estimate?
Yeah, they must have been at least 15 to 20 or something like that. Yeah.
And man, we were taking them on. Like we were like going toe to toe with them and taking on that Zerg. I mean, we had to be careful in line of sight and position and kind of lead them into these choke points, but we were doing it, man. It went on for quite a while. We wiped them a couple of times. I think a couple of us had died once or twice, but for the most part, we were laying it to them, man. And, I haven't been that like amped for PvP in a really long time. That was super duper fun.
Yeah, and that's what's really great about Imperial City is that you get those bigger fights. When you play BGs a lot, you get those like small scale kind of encounters, but with places like Imperial City and Serial, you really get a good chance to just fight these super outnumbered fights, and when you come out on top, it's extremely satisfying.
It's so fun. And that was just right. Like we had a little 5-person squad. Every one of us were, competent players. And we were just communicating really well and calling out things that we see and just being coordinated and, man, having some success. I mean, so much so that I think we discouraged that Zerg. They ended up like, we didn't see them anymore. I don't know if they went down to the sewers or if they just left Imperial City or what, but there came a certain point where we were just like, I guess we won Imperial City. Like it's, they all left because they don't want to deal with us anymore.
Those are the kind of moments where like you're with your friends, you're coordinating things, things are just clicking. It's just like, it's just great. That's the reason why you play this game. Like,
yeah,
just those experiences where, your theory crafting all comes to life and it works out.
Yeah, that was kind of a ragtag crew. Like, we all were just like, well, if we all want to play on the same alliance, this is the character that I have that I can do that with, So we weren't even really optimized that well. We all just had decent builds and we know how to play a little bit, and it just worked out really well. Super duper fun. I love Imperial City when it's good. That's the thing, is you don't always find experiences like that. It's kind of, sometimes it's hard to find action, or sometimes you just get totally zerged down, and finding that sweet spot can be kind of difficult, but when it's good, it's so good, man. It's so fun.
Yeah, and twice a year we get Mid-Year Mayhem, which gives you all these rewards to incentivize folks to come in, right? So folks that normally aren't there, or folks that usually are there, you get the convergence of just like a bajillion people there, and it's nice because there's a lot of action, right? So
it's coming up, I think.
Yeah,
Mid-Year Mayhem, or White Strake that they call it now.
Right, and then also recently in the news there was that little announcement that they might be doing some other things to incentivize people to do other parts of PvP. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I hope something really comes of that. That would be nice. So that was fun, Imperial City. I'm going to have to start doing some more Imperial City. Uncle Sam says, favorite time of year, better than Christmas, Mid-Year Mayhem. Yeah, Sam likes farming all those noobs. That's his favorite thing. Good old-fashioned pug stomp. Sam says, hell yeah. So just a few more little like kind of PvP observations over the last couple of weeks. Oakensoul, Corrosive Dragon Knights are still extremely popular. That's kind of the flavor of the month right now. Although I kind of feel the tide turning just a little bit. I think a lot of people have kind of experienced that by now, and they're kind of like, okay, that's cool, I get it. And it seems like a lot of people are playing Stamsorks these days. I feel like Stamsorks are the ones that are ultimately this patch are going to emerge like the number one kind of build that people are wanting to play. All the builds that give me the most trouble, that I die to the most, are Stamsorks for the most part.
Yes, and on my werewolf it hurts as well because they use that bow, they use those poison skills, and I take way more damage on my werewolf. So
yeah.
So if you want to kill werewolf, you want a good tip is use poison and use the bow.
Yeah, Bowsorks in particular, they're and that's been kind of trending for a couple of patches now. That's becoming more and more popular, and it does not seem to be letting up now. It's a very popular main weapon choice, and the really good Stamsorks that I see aren't even using Oakensoul. I mean, I'm sure some of them are, and they're doing well, but the ones that I see are just like a normal 2-bar build that are just wrecking, man. I think a lot of them are using Savage Werewolf and that Serpent's Disdain set, which extends the duration of status effects. I think Sam's using that on his Necromancer, but that seems to be kind of a popular setup for them. But yeah, the thing is like these Oaken Dragon Knights that stay in corrosive form, like they're really hard to deal with, but they're usually really slow. And my characters are always really fast. So honestly, the Dragon Knights don't give me much trouble. Like, worst case scenario, I can just run away and that's it. But there's no running away from a Stamsork. They're going to keep up with you no matter who you are. And you're going to have to take that damage, especially the ones using that bow. It's all ranged attacks. Man, they're really tough to deal with.
Right, yeah, and in PvP, a lot of it sometimes comes down to target selection. And with the Stamsork's, abilities to move really fast, the way they're usually built, they can just really move around the battlefield, really fast.
Yes.
Pick their targets, burst them down, kill them. And then when they really do want to kill that Oakensoul DK that's in corrosive, they just wait for a bunch of their friends to show up to the battle. And then they just,
right.
To try to zerg them down, basically. So
they kind of have that in common with Nightblades, where they can engage and disengage at will. They have that just automatic button that just bails them out of trouble anytime they want with Streak.
Yes, and the speed. So that's why they're so strong.
So yeah, I think Stamsork is probably the strongest spec you can play right now. Oaken DKs are kind of the hotness, but I can kind of feel that starting to die down just a little bit. Nightblades are also kind of having a field day right now. Oakensoul is benefiting them big time with that major force. I think a lot of them are getting minor force from Race Against Time, and they're just stacking that crit damage to the sky. And I mentioned on the last episode, like, I'm getting one-shot by Nightblades, and that hasn't been the case in several patches, where it's just like a single global cooldown, and it's lights out. Like, my health bar just vanished completely.
Yeah, and on my werewolf, I have 30k HP, and that is literally the floor. Because anything lower than that, any Nightblade, well, the Nightblades that are building the way they are right now, they're just completely just deleting me. If I'm like fighting someone, I'm at 25k HP, one of those guys shows up, I'm done. So I make sure I'm topped off because I'm at 30k HP most of the time. But yeah, that's the floor right now. At least
I would agree. 30k is the bare minimum, and before this patch, I would have said 30k is a good amount of health. That's what you should shoot for, but absolutely no lower than 27k. That was kind of my rule of thumb before. Like 27 is the bare minimum. Now I think 30k is the bare minimum, and if you can go a little higher than that, all the better. Because of that, also I think absolutely mandatory in any PvP build, including if you yourself are a Nightblade. You got to have some kind of anti-stealth in your build, some way to pull Nightblades out of stealth. There's no two ways about it. You're going to get ganked. They're going to kill you if you don't have some solution for Nightblades. So whether that's, with some sort of proc set or with some ability like a Radiant Mage Light or Camo Hunter or a Revealing Flare or just like an AoE direct damage attack of some kind, just some solution, or you're gonna have a hard time because they're just on a rampage right now.
Absolutely, and I always have a couple stacks of detect potions ready to go as well.
Oh yeah, that's another good option. Totally, that's a very, very good option actually.
Yeah, and it lasts quite a while.
It lasts quite a while, and the Nightblades, they don't know that you have it. They can't. Nothing indicates to them that you can see them, so you can take them by surprise that way.
And most of the Nightblades that are running that much, that high of a burst, they themselves are pretty squishy as well. So if you're able to see them, you do have, and if you do take the opportunity to get the jump on them, you do have, a small window where they just don't know what's going on,
mm-hmm.
and you can burst them down. But yeah, it's a good counter.
The setup I see these nasty Nightblades using are the Oakensoul Mythic, Calurian's Legacy, and Ashen Grip. That's basically the nasty build that keeps killing me. So if you want to get some good ganks, that's the setup right there. And just stack your crit damage as high as you can.
Yeah, and one of the things that I usually like to do to counter them is just to also move sort of erratically on my end. Sometimes I intentionally move in diagonal patterns to so that they can't really position themselves exactly the way they want, which throws them off that 2 seconds just long enough so that you can not get bursted down by them or survive their burst.
Yeah, because they need to hit you from a flank in order to stun you with their spammable, so that's what they're always trying to do. So yeah, if you're kind of moving around a lot, also just moving in general. Like I feel like most of the time when I do get ganked, it's because I was standing still. If you have a fair amount of movement speed in your build and you just stay moving all the time, it can make it difficult for them to land their full combo. Like maybe they'll get off an attack or two, but they probably won't be able to get the full combo on you before you're out of position or whatever. So just never stand still. If you're in a PvP zone, just stay on the move all the time.
Right, and that mobility and speed, repositioning, that's a staple within all my builds, not for all my characters. Like I make sure to
Yes.
have at least race against time on there, at least on my skill bar. I make sure to have swift if I don't innately have some sort of race against time on, or if my character already has some innate speed to it. I'm always moving at least 30% faster than normal. So.
I have to be fast. I think it's a matter of like personal preference and play style, but I have way more success keeping myself alive by utilizing movement speed and positioning than if I try to build tanky. Like I feel like any build I've ever tried to make where I'm trying to be tanky, I just die anyway. Like I can't tank out the damage, So just being fast, having good sustain, and being able to reposition as often and as much as I need to, and having good damage as well. That works for me the best. Even in high damage metas like this, I feel like that's what's working best for me.
Right, and yeah, and mobility and speed in general, I've found is one of the best ways to mitigate damage altogether. So you can have all the heavy armor in the world and all the resistance in the world, but if you're getting hit by nukes of like 20k a pop, you're gonna die. But if you're not
Right.
getting hit at all because you're too far away to get hit, that's even better. So the
Yeah.
best way to mitigate damage is to not get hit in the first place.
Plus, it's the most fun way to play. Like just being really fast, like that's just a blast to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Standing in place and holding the block button, that's no fun. Maybe for some people it is, but to me, I don't think so.
Only for those that like to sit on flags and flip them, and I don't know. That's what they find.
We don't talk about those
Okay.
those people.
Okay.
They know who they are. It's yeah, there really is this like death matchers versus the objectivers like freaking feud going on. You go to the official forums, man, it is a daily debate going on about that whole thing. Any other like standout PvP stuff that you've noticed that are just is like interesting or anything like that?
Well, one of the things I found the most interesting is that, on the forums for weeks on end while the last PTS was going, there was this, I guess, prediction that there would be this huge wave of werewolf players that would just, werewolves that would just pop out of the
Yeah.
woodwork. But for the most part, I don't really, I haven't really seen them around. It's just, I just see the same werewolf players I've seen before. And some people might say, Skoomah, what werewolf builds are you running? I kind of want to try it out, but most time people don't follow through. So all the werewolves that we thought were going to show up in PvP haven't, and they've chosen to be, their one bar DKs or one bar Sorks instead. And I think the meta is still kind of shaken out right now. It takes time for people to figure out what's going to work and what isn't. So we'll see.
I was right there. I was one of those people. Like when Oakensoul hit the PTS, I was like, oh, it's about to be werewolf time. Get ready, people. We're going to the pound. But yeah, you're totally right. Like maybe initially there was a slight uptick in werewolves, but in general, I'm not really seeing any more than I had before. And I think it's just because I think other classes just get more out of Oakensoul than werewolves do. Werewolves get a lot out of it for sure, but I think other classes just kind of get a little bit more out of it. That's what it seems like.
I think so. I think having 100%, almost 100% uptime on Corrosive and 100% uptime
Yeah.
on Colossus is a lot more fun to play.
Yeah, yeah. Or even like I would think on a Templar, like their Crescent Sweep ultimate is like 70 ultimate, I think. Like imagine with major heroism, you're just spamming that thing constantly. That would be fun too, I think.
Yeah, when you encounter those Templars that can just charge in Crescent and start jabbing away, and they can do that, every 10 seconds, every 20 seconds, they can be pretty formidable. Because like a lot of the Templar skills are do damage and heal you at the same time, right? So they don't necessarily need like this back bar resto stuff thing going on. They can just bake it all in on that one bar. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, the Oaken Templars are really good. It's also true for Nightblades, like that major heroism. Their NCAP ultimate is only, I think, 70 ultimate as well. So they're getting that thing constantly as well. But how's your werewolf been feeling in this meta? Do you feel like you're stronger this patch than last patch? Or, are you about on the same playing field you were before, or what?
The Oaken ring has definitely made a huge difference for Werewolf. We make good use of the Major Berserk, which is 10% more damage. We make use of the Major Courage, paired up with our Minor Courage, innate buff with the Werewolf,
Uh-huh.
with one of our morphs there in terms of the color of the Werewolf we run with. We get a lot of damage out of that. And last patch, I would say that Werewolves are a little bit underperforming in terms of in comparison to other classes. If other classes was like 100%, full power, we were maybe like 90%, compared to them. But
I
this
see.
patch, the way that I've adjusted my build, I'd say I'm pretty much on par with most other classes. So, so it's nice. It's nice to feel like you have at least a good shot against other classes. Um, the feedback from folks I've actually fought against in BGs and other forms of PvP has been good. So yeah, I'm really happy with where we're at right now. I don't think Werewolves are necessarily overpowered versus other
Uh,
classes. Like when I can encounter like a Corrosive DK or a Sork that's really good with the bow and really fast, I find them extremely deadly. But I feel like I'm at least competitive against other classes.
I would say so. Just in my experience, running as a healer in group with you, you do that werewolf thing where you're just like hyper aggressive. You jump up in the middle of that meat blender, when there's a when there's a big brawl going on, and you hang in there and dish out those claws. It's freaking cool, man. I love watching that.
Right, and I think a lot of attention has been paid towards these classes and their Oaken builds and everything. But gotta give credit to the healers as well, like yourself. Whenever you run with a good healer, it really does turn the tide of battle. A team with a healer versus one without, or just there are just some healers in the game that are just really really good, and when you come across them, you just know that maybe that isn't the team you want to fight against.
Yes. There's a certain Sork healer that I'm sure you know exactly who I'm talking about. Anytime I see them in a battleground, I just already know nobody on that team's dying. Just no, don't even waste your resources because it just ain't happening.
Yeah,
So, what is your werewolf build? We already said you're using Rush of Agony and Oakensoul, right?
yeah, and right now I'm using Stunes so that when I set a target off balance, it increases my penetration by something close to 6,000
Yeah.
6,000 penetration. So yeah, so now right now I'm a medium armor werewolf. I can be pretty squishy, so I can't really hang in the fight that long. But I'm super fast because I'm in medium armor. I hit super hard for the extra weapon damage with the medium armor. So it's right now the build is Stunes, Rush Agony, and Oaken Soul with one piece trainee. So yeah, so that's the build. I reach almost maximum penetration on folks, so I'm pretty much hitting people naked. And the Rush of Agony pulls them all together. I fear them. They're stuck in place. I do some AoE damage, and I think my maximum howl, the highest howl I've gotten off people this patch so far has been 16.5k.
Yeah, I think you sent me that screenshot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how high as I can get it. So yeah, it does good damage.
We love Stoons on the show here. We have a guild, a very small guild called Stoons Goons. It's named after that set, so we always get excited when somebody uses Stoons.
Oh yeah, Stunes is the best. Penetration is a great way to increase your damage in PvP.
Yeah, it was a running joke when that set first appeared on PTS because it was like I don't even remember what it was at that point, but it was like hilariously overpowered. It never made it to live in that form, but we just couldn't stop making jokes about how just ridiculous it was, and we ended up naming our guild after it.
Yeah, what's really great about Stunes is the crafted set, right? So if you need something
Yeah,
heavy, any weight, any trait, you can just make it instead of using your transmute stones. And you know, for folks that are really into theory crafting, if you notice, Rush of Agony is a set you have to grind for. You have to go into a dungeon for. But Stunes is a crafted set, so it's nice that you can have both a strong crafted set and a strong dungeon set paired together can make a really good build.
yeah, it's a very very good set. Um, cool, man. Anything else you want to say about that build, or any other builds you've been playing with?
Um, I think with most builds, it also comes down to playstyle as well. So I like to be highly mobile. I like to pick my fights, and I like to get in there almost like a hit and run style.
That's what I
So
like
there,
to.
Yeah, so there are folks that just I'm basically a stam sort humanoid build that runs around and hits and runs, but I do it as a werewolf, right?
Yeah.
Some other folks like to really get in it and just brawl and grind it out, right? So I do have this other build that I run, which is a heavy armor build, which is Kind's Marcher and Russia Agony, right? So it's a little bit a variant of what I just talked about, but that's more of a heavy armor build. It can sit in the fight a little bit longer. It can grind it out. So for folks, builds are really it should match your play style, right? So there are some
Hmm.
werewolves that like to light attack a lot and like to do dot damage, and those builds can be pretty powerful too. But for me, I like the burst damage.
Nice. Um, well, I've been playing with a couple of builds. Like we mentioned before, we were playing together a lot with me on my MagCro healer. That character's name is Despair. She's an Argonian and one of my absolute favorite builds. And I've been having a blast with it in this current meta because it's kind of similar. This meta kind of reminds me of the old 25% Malakath proc meta, where damage is just kind of through the roof, and it can be kind of difficult to out heal it. Like I'll talk about my warden here in a minute, and she's doing really great too. But she's mostly just about like being a very powerful healer, and she does a lot of healing. And even though Despair, my macro, has maybe half the healing power, oftentimes she's way more successful because she's focusing more on enemy suppression rather than pure group support. Really, like she has all kinds of crowd control with caltrops and the wall of frost and the remote totem. So all three types of crowd control. You have a hard stun, you have an immobilize, you have a snare. Those are all in AoE form, like just spreading over the entire ground everywhere that any enemy is walking on. They're just going to have an extremely hard time with it. Plus, I'm tossing all these debuffs on them, making them weaker and weaker. And I really like how that goes into the necromancer theme. It just makes sense that a necromancer would be like defiling people and making them weaker and tearing them down and just kind of having this nightmare scenario going on. And it's just working really well. And like I said, damage is so high right now that, if you have a team coming at you that's ready to drop an ult dump, no amount of healing is going to save you from that. If you're just taking 40k damage in a single instant, healing's not going to do anything. But if you can CC those enemies and break up that ult dump and make it so that they can't all drop all that damage all at the same time because they're being immobilized and stunned and slowed down and all this different stuff. And whenever they do deliver it, they're weakened because of all these debuffs and stuff. To me, that seems to be having. I've been having a lot more success as a healer with that. So my MagCro build. I made a video for it. It's on YouTube. Just search for Ket Sparrowhawk. But I'll just tell you what it is right now, just between you and me. It is Wretched Vitality on the body, Kin Marcher's Cruelty on the jewelry and front bar weapon, which is a charged frost staff. Have the Maelstrom Resto on the back bar. The Gaze of Sithis Mythic Helm. That's just mandatory on every one of my builds at this point. And One Piece Magma Incarnate. So it is a light armor build. With swift jewelry. I know light armor is unconventional for a healer, but I just don't like heavy armor. I really don't like using heavy armor on any builds at all. I feel like I'm slow. I have terrible sustain, and like I was saying earlier, like being tanky doesn't really seem to help me. Like just trying to like sit there and face tank a group of people that are trying to burn me down, like they're going to overtake me at some point, but if I can have good mobility, if I can line of sight and outpace them, I have a lot better luck with that. So I like staying in light armor, have a little bit of extra mobility, a lot more sustain. And yeah, so I think that was the key. The real key to kind of making this build feel really good to me was equipping caltrops, putting that on my bar slot, and making the jewelry 3 pieces swift. I think as soon as I did that, survivability just became butter because I'm just slowing everyone down, and at the same time, I'm faster than most people that I come across. And the debuffs are just kind of outrageous. So the Kin Marcher, you basically have 2 major debuffs on everyone around you at all times with that set. I'm also giving them the Chilled status effect, which gives them minor maim that reduces their damage done. Caltrops gives them major breach and minor breach because it's applying that sundered status that gives them minor breach. So that's almost 9,000 reduced armor. You're giving all your teammates an extra 9,000 penetration against any target that's standing in those Caltrops. Pretty darn nice. On top of whatever penetration your allies already have. So I've just really been enjoying this build. I think it's so thematically perfect that I'm providing group support by means of weakening enemies. It's just so perfect for a necromancer. Plus the heals are pretty decent as well at the same time. And it's just fun. It feels really mean. Like, as far as healing goes, it feels like weirdly aggressive for being a healer because you're just making life miserable for these enemies. And it feels abusive and like you're just kind of bullying them. And I start feeling bad after a while. Which is, like I said, just for a healer, that's just kind of a strange feeling, but it's pretty cool. Like, especially the role play aspect of it. Like I said, like I keep saying, it's just right for a necromancer, I think.
Yeah, when I was getting healed by you, Kat, it was great. I just felt almost invincible. That's a lot of things when people are building a healer, it's more than just healing, right? It's what else are you bringing to the group, right? So Tide Marches is great because if you think about it, all those major debuffs you're applying to folks, you're pretty much kind of canceling out all the major buffs you get with Oakensoul, right? And then all the various forms of CC. If you're not in control of your character in PvP, you're kind of in a bad spot there. So it provides a great benefit to the team, great value to the team.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's what's so cool about it is like she does have some heals. Or like when you look at her healing numbers on the scoreboard at the end, they're not like crazy impressive. Like a really good match, she might like have 800,000 heals, which of course the intensive mender doesn't show up on the scoreboard, so it's actually more than that. But even so, it's not like 2 million, 3 million heals like you see sometimes. But that's just part of the value. It's really the CC and the debuffs that are most of it. And my Warden healer, she does get like 2 million or more heals. Like she's an incredibly powerful healer. But like I keep saying, I feel like I actually have more success. I'm better at carrying teams with my MagCro because of all the other stuff that she has going on.
Yeah, and the sign of a good healer too, a good healer build, or just is that when you're as a damage dealer, when you're at like the last like maybe one or two abilities before you run completely dry with your resources, like stam or magicka based, if you feel comfortable enough with your healer to just go all in and just go empty, just to secure a kill, that's a sign of a good healer build too. Is that do your teammates trust you to keep them alive? And I always felt really great in those matches that we had. I would just go the extra mile. Yeah,
like I was saying earlier, I've discovered that it is so much fun to heal a werewolf because they're just so hyper aggressive, or at least that's how you were playing yours. You just like get in there and just freaking go nuts on a group of people, and you were tanky enough to take a hit or two and not just die right away. So I kind of had an opportunity to do a little something with my heals and keep you alive and keep you going. And it's fun to have kind of this just wrecking ball in front of you that you're just kind of keeping them going. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's what's great about the werewolf is that you do have that burst heal, right? That's one of the best burst heals in the game. And once you pair it up with the healer that can give you hots or anything extra for healing, the werewolf just really is able to just go that extra mile, which is great.
Yeah. So, anytime I play on one of my healers, I end up playing with my other healer shortly thereafter. So I spend a lot of time on my MagCro. She's locked in. The build video's up, so that's kind of sealed and done with. And so now it's time to spend some time with my Magicka Warden healer. And I was just kind of saying, by comparison, it seems like I have more success on my MagCro. But really, I think there's more nuance to it than that. I think they're better for different situations. I think on my MagDen, and her build's been updated. I'll talk about it here in a second. But I think with the MagDen, from the way I have them built anyway, is like if we were going to put together like a really nicely optimized BG squad where, we're optimized as good as we can possibly be, and we're trying to make like the perfect battleground squad we possibly can, I think my MagDen actually would be a superior healer to have in that case. If we're just kind of ragtag, like, hey, I'm going to jump on this build, or whatever, or if I'm like in the solo queue and I don't know who the heck's going to be on my team, I think the MagCro has a better. She's better at actually just straight up carrying groups to success, just dragging them kicking and screaming to the finish line. But if I'm in a well optimized group and we just want every advantage we could possibly have, I think my MagDen is actually better at elevating my teammates, making them more powerful and more capable of getting the kills they need to get in order for us to win. So it is situational. And I just don't find myself in that situation all that often where like the group really is like that dialed in. Usually when I am in a group, we're just it's kind of for funsies, we're not really taking it that super seriously. But that all being said, I spent the entirety of yesterday, pretty much my entire 4th of July, I spent getting my Magic Award and figured out for this patch. And I think I'm pretty happy with where she is right now. Shout out to Uncle Sam in the chat right now. He gave me a couple of ideas that have turned out to work out really, really well. So the build now is 5 pieces Rallying Cry on the body, Hades Hearth as a back bar set with a powered Resto staff, the Master's Inferno staff on the front bar, Gaze of Sithis Mythic Helm, and 1-piece Magma Incarnate. You'll notice all my builds have Gaze of Sithis, and you'll also notice all my builds have 3 Swift and the Bewitched Sugar Skulls. That's basically like my template. I have to have Gaze of Sithis, 3 Swift Jewelry, and the Bewitched Sugar Skulls for my food, and then we'll figure the rest of the build out from there. But I have to start with that. I just like having that real like that real dense ball of stats that it's almost like this big ball of clay that you can mold into anything you want from there. That's what I like. But that's another light armor build. 3 Swift on the jewelry. That Rallying Cry set. So we already mentioned that before. I don't think I've really talked about it. So it's a newer set. That's the one that whenever you crit heal yourself or a group member, you get up to 300 weapon and spell damage and 1650 critical resistance. And then that value slightly decreases based on the number of group members that are affected. But even if you're affecting all 4 group members in a battleground, you're still getting over 200 weapon and spell damage and like 1300 something critical resistance, that's the same amount as your base crit resistance. You're basically doubling your base crit resistance plus getting some extra damage in the mix as well. We're going to talk about critical resistance a little bit more in depth here in a minute, but having a lot of critical resistance is a very valuable thing right now because of all these Nightblades running around that will just absolutely insta-nuke you. So I've noticed on this build, I don't really get ganked. As soon as I started using the Rallying Cry set, I don't really get ganked anymore. It helps a whole lot. So that's a really great set. I also like it because when it procs, it makes a big colorful circle that goes around me. And this build is all about big magic circles. I have that. I have Hades Hearth that makes a big orange circle. I have the Budding Seeds ground AoE and the Illustrious Healing ground AoE. Those are 2 more circles, plus the trees, the Warden Trees healing ultimate is another circle. So I have like 5 circles that I'm just like slapping on the ground all over the place. And, kind of like I was talking about with my MagCro, everything is so perfectly thematically appropriate for that. I kind of get the same feeling here with my Warden. She's all about nature and rejuvenation and nurturing and all that sort of stuff. And she's just placing all these circles on the ground that do exactly that for my allies. I think that's pretty cool. Another thing that I really am liking a lot about about this MagDen setup is she actually has pretty decent offense. Like she plays like a healer 90% of the time, but if I start getting focused, if someone starts if they pick me out as the healer and they want to try to target dummy me for a second, I can flip to that front bar with that Master Destro staff, and I have 5k spell damage, 14k penetration, 33% crit. I mean, those aren't like outrageous offensive stats, but they're enough to, throw a little sauce at them and make them think twice about just going full ham on me, On top of all the heals I have, I'm already pretty difficult to kill. Plus, I can throw a little, kind of a spicy combo at them at the same time. I like kind of turning and burning like that and taking people by surprise with that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's also where, a lot of healers really to get to that next level is not only are you healing your team, like you're like a full healer, when you need to be, but once in a while, if you're actually able to lay in a little bit of damage in there to help your team get across the finish line with finishing people off, that's a really big deal. And a lot of healer builds may not necessarily actually have an attack skill on their bar, but if you're able to do anything along those lines, that's really the mark of a really good healing build.
Yeah, I like at the very least, even if I'm in full on healing mode, I'm usually throwing in deep fissures in between healing. Like every 3 abilities, I'll cast a deep fissure just to keep that AOE pressure, and it gives everyone that it hits major breach as well. So I'm debuffing people at the same time. So at the very least, I'm tossing those things into the mix while healing. Um, So yeah, I'm really liking this build a lot. Like I said, I don't think this build is going to like just straight up be able to carry groups the way my MagCro can. But if I'm in a good group, she's going to absolutely elevate them to be as strong as they can be, and enable them to do what they need to do. So I'm looking forward to playing with her some more. Like I said, I just got this build set up yesterday. And I've done a few matches so far. I'm planning probably over the next couple of weeks, month or so, maybe. I'm probably going to kind of mainline this character and see how good I can be. I might continue to make some changes and adjustments to the build as I go, but I don't know, maybe not. I'm kind of really liking how it is right now. I like the bar setup just how it is. I had to make some changes to get Mage Light fit in there because it's not optional. You gotta have Mage Light or something like it right now. And I was trying to get by without it because I really liked my bar setup the way it was, but there was no way around it. You gotta have it. So yeah, those are the builds I've been playing with. Is there anything else, Skoomah, PvP related or build related, or anything else you've been up to in ESO lately? What about High Isle? You done any High Isle questing?
No, the only thing I did with High Isle was trying to get the leads for the Oakensoul ring. So
Okay.
that's
So this
the
is just
most
the
I.
Oakensoul patch for you. That's pretty much all it is.
Yeah, and it's made Werewolf competitive, which makes me happy because for a while there I was playing my DK. My DK is a two bar DK actually, and
Whoa, I don't follow.
so I've thought about using a 1 bar build, but I just can't get away from it. I really like my dual wield in the front bar. I really like my resto bar because I can actually heal my friends in a BG or in PvP
Hmm.
and provide group support. And
I like that too.
it's just too hard. It's just too hard to give up. And I also run Rallying Cry on my DK as well on the back bar for resto staff. And what's really great about that set is that it provides so much crit resistance. It allows your teammates or even yourself to not necessarily have to run in pen, right, to mitigate the crit damage.
Yeah,
That crit damage mitigation will come from your set, which allows you to run more damage elsewhere in terms of your armor traits, things like that. So, but yeah, I run a uh, double 2 bar DK build, and yeah, I've pretty much stayed with that, and it's been fun.
I still haven't farmed Oakensoul. I do not have it yet. I've just been trying to kind of navigate the meta as best I can without it. I'm kind of always like that. I often do not jump on kind of the hot new thing until it passes, until some people have moved on to something else, and then I'll pick it up and be like, all right, let me see what I can do with this thing. It took me a while to get on the Malakath train as well, but there came a time when it was unavoidable. It was just like, I'm not going to be able to compete at all without Malakath, and I may come to that same conclusion here, but not yet.
Right. With the werewolf, you don't give up much versatility. Last patch, I was running a lot of Gaze of Sithis, so this patch,
Hmm.
Oakensoul was just too good of a mythic to not use. But on regular like humanoid builds, right, all the other classes, giving up a second bar and that versatility is quite a bit to give up. So I'm not sure if I'm ready to do that yet, but I know a lot of people have.
I love how you call non-werewolves humanoids. It's really funny.
In the werewolf community, that's what we name everything else.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, you mentioned critical resistance and how that is a very valuable thing to have in this meta. Since everyone's running around with Oakensoul, everyone has a permanent uptime on major force. So a lot of people, especially Nightblades, but they're not the only ones. They're stacking crit damage as high as they can. And several episodes ago, we had a discussion about critical resistance and particularly the M-Pen trait. And we were trying to determine if we thought it was actually a good trait to use in a PvP build, because the conventional wisdom for the longest time was, if you're making a PvP build, you got to have MPen or you're just going to die as soon as anyone even looks at you. And so we did a little math and kind of tried to decide if that was actually true. And really what we concluded at the end of that conversation was MPen wasn't such a great trait. And since then, I've stopped using it completely on all my builds. I don't use MPen. But since Oakensoul's come around, there's a lot more crit damage than there used to be. It's kind of made me think it's time to reconsider that and revisit that and see if I still feel that way or if things have changed. So we're going to have a similar conversation to what we did at that time, but we'll change some numbers around to reflect the current situation. So this will be a little bit of number talk. I'll try not to make it sound so monotonous, but I think it's valuable information here, so try to follow. So first of all, let me just give everyone a quick reminder of how critical resistance works. So it's a little different from other forms of damage mitigation because it's not reducing damage as it's coming in to your character. You're reducing your attacker's crit damage modifier directly before they even start attacking. So everyone has 1350 base critical resistance, which translates to about 20% critical damage mitigation. So if you're going up against an attacker who has the standard base 50% crit damage, right? Their critical attacks deal 50% additional damage, right? Well, you actually subtract your 20% crit mitigation from their 50% crit damage, and they're left with 30%. So their critical attacks are actually going to deal 30% additional damage, not 50%. And that's the base in PvP. Without any other things being factored in PvP, critical attacks deal 30% additional damage, not 50%, because everyone has that base mitigation. And of course, you can have more crit damage and more crit mitigation and that sort of stuff, but that's the baseline. And then if you're wearing 7 MPen, then that's about another 12%. So that'd be a total of 32% crit damage mitigation, which would lower your attacker's 50% crit rate or crit damage down to 18%. So that's basically how that works. And that sounds like a big difference, like 50% crit damage all the way down to 18% crit damage. That sounds like a really big difference, but when you actually plug some numbers in and run the calculations and see what comes out the other end, you'll be surprised. So let's do a couple of hypothetical scenarios here, and we'll do a similar kind of thing that we did last time. So let's pretend that we're playing on a build that's kind of squishy, like most of the builds that I play. We're going to have 20,000 armor, like regular resistance, 20,000 armor, plus we're in PvP, so we have battle spirit. And so the way the math works out with those two things combined is you're going to end up taking about 35% of an ability's tooltip as damage, right? So if somebody hits you with a 10k tooltip attack, it'll actually hit for 3,500, right? 35% of 10k. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So let's take that that 10k attack. You're going up against an attacker who's going to target you with a 10k attack, and they have a 50% crit damage modifier. And then that's going to go up against your 20% base crit resistance. So that means that 10k attack would crit for 13k. And then that's going to go through battle spirit and your armor. And that's going to end up hitting you for 4,550. That's with no MPen at all, 4,550. If you're wearing 7 MPen pieces, that gets taken down to 4,130. So 4,550 versus 4,130 with all MPen. That's a difference of 420 damage, which is about a 10% difference. So that's basically identical to the scenario we talked about last time. Basically, my conclusion there is still absolutely not worth wearing. If it's saving me from 420 damage in that scenario, I'm not going to care too much about that. So nothing's changed there. I still have the same opinion on that. But let's see a situation that reflects the current meta. Let's say you're going up against someone wearing Oakensoul and they're stacking their crit damage as high as they possibly can. Let's go the most extreme we can go. And let's say they've reached the crit damage cap, which is 125%. So they have a 125% crit damage modifier. So if that attacker targets you with that same 10k attack, after your crit mitigation gets factored in, that is going to crit for 20,500. And then that number goes through Battle Spirit and your 20k armor and ends up actually hitting you for 7,175 with no impen. And if you have 7 impen, that would be 6,755. So 7175 with no impen and 6755 with all impen. Again, that's a 420 damage difference. And this time, that's only a 6% difference. And that's something that I think is interesting because it seems that as we go up against attackers who have higher crit damage modifiers, we're actually getting less value out of the impen trait, right? Because it saved us from 10% damage in the last scenario, but now it's only saving us from 6% damage. And 420 difference, from a 20,000 crit, it just seems like paltry to me. So I'm even less convinced, actually, in that scenario that impen is worth using. What do you think, Skoomah?
Yeah, I think so too. Like 420, when you think about it, extra damage. If you're healing for extra because you have more weapon damage or spell damage because you're using a specific Mundus Stone for that, or a Mundus Stone that gives you more regen so that you can pop off more heals to mitigate damage. It's all about trade-offs, right? What are you choosing to use instead of impen? If you're using, well fitted to run around a little bit better, save more resources when you're running around, roll dodging a little bit more often. If you're running divines for more damage to amp Mundus Stones or for damage or for regen, you really got to think about like what are you trading off for using 7 impen?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like 7 impen saving me from 420 damage from a what's theoretically started as a 20k crit. Like, I'm not even going to notice a difference there. It's going to be a lights out in either case, So I'm still not convinced impen is worth using. Let's do one more scenario, and we're going to take it to the most extreme we can for the scenario that I've been running into a lot. So let's suppose we're getting ganked by a Nightblade, and they're an Oakensoul Nightblade. They have a 125% crit damage modifier. They're going to hit us with a combo that consists of a heavy attack, an end cap, a Kalurian's Legacy proc. Their glyph is going to fire. They're going to hit us with an execute. They're going to be light attack weaving the whole time. Let's just say that all of that adds up to 50,000 worth of tooltips in damage. And if they get extremely lucky, and every single one of those attacks were to crit, that would, after our base crit mitigation, that would all add up to 102,500 damage. 102,500, and then that has to go through Battle Spirit and our armor, and that gets mitigated down to 35,875 if you're not wearing any impen at all. 35,875. So that's just, for all of my builds, that's a lights out. There's no surviving. If I were to be wearing 7 impen, then that would go down to 33,775. That's still a lights out for me. for most of my builds. So that's a difference of 2,100. Again, that's a 6% difference. I'm still not convinced. Personally, I feel like in either scenario, either with all impen or with no impen, I'm dying either way to that combo. Unless I just stack a lot more health.
And that's right. So, as you said before, the floor right now, is 30k HP. You'll survive that combo that you just mentioned, that should hit you if everything went perfect for 35,000. But let's say, for example, one of those things didn't crit.
Right.
It's still going to hit you for around 30k, right? So that's why the floor is at 30k. But to feel super comfortable in an actual, brawling scenario where you're just sitting in the fight and going at it for a little while, the new safety point really is 35k HP, and your math proves it. So.
Yes, I would say 35k would be like where you can feel fairly comfortable these days. Or running a lot of regular resistance, not crit resistance, but just regular resistance. I feel like that's more effective at keeping yourself alive. But that Rallying Cry set. Now let's look at that thing. So with Rallying Cry, even if all 4 group members are being affected, so it's taking that value down a little bit, you're still getting like 1330 crit mitigation or crit resistance, which is basically the same as your base crit resistance. You're basically doubling your base crit resistance in that case. So if you're wearing Rallying Cry and no MPen, right? So it's the same, we have 20k regular armor, no MPen, but we're wearing Rallying Cry and it's active. Then that same combo now is going to hit us for 31,675. And versus the the 35,000 example we gave, that's 4,200 damage difference. That's literally saving us from double the damage that 7 MPen is giving us. And that makes sense because Rallying Cry gives us twice as much crit resistance as 7 MPen does. And when you have that much crit resistance, it really is worth it. And that's kind of the conclusion I'm really coming to, is that it's not that crit resistance isn't worthwhile, it's that MPen isn't worthwhile. If you're getting a lot of crit resistance from a potent source like Rallying Cry, then it's absolutely worth it. It's saving you from a lot more damage. It actually is worthwhile. Plus that set's giving you a little bit of damage to use as well. Plus you're sharing all of that with all of your teammates as well. It's just such a good set. So I think that's where I'm at. I'm still probably not going to use MPen on any builds because I don't think it's going to do much for me. And Rallying Cry is a very popular set. There's a very good chance, even in the solo queue, that you're going to have somebody on your team wearing that set. So I'm just kind of counting on that, honestly. And otherwise, like you were saying earlier, I'm going to rely on my moon. I usually use a Recovery Mundus on my builds. So I'm either going to have Divines so that I'm getting more juice out of that Mundus Stone, so I have more resources to react and take action and do something, or Well Fitted so I can dodge more and just avoid all damage, or even Sturdy if you like to play tanky builds. I mean, if you can sit there and just hold the block button and cut all damage in half, I mean, that's going to be extremely valuable. I just don't think you're getting a lot out of MPen no matter how you slice it. So revisiting this in this new meta with Oakensoul and all of that, I don't think my mind has really changed.
Yeah, and another thing too with Rallying Cry is that you're giving all your teammates that extra huge chunk of impen with the Rallying Cry, right? Mm-hmm. Which allows them to not run 35k HP. They can run closer to 30k, which gives them that extra 5,000. Instead of dumping 5,000 extra attribute points and to get that extra 5,000, they can just dump it into their offensive stat of choice, right? Stam or mag. And then instead of running 7 impen, they can choose to run another, trait like Divines to, really maximize their damage or regen. So yeah, Rallying Cry is definitely a great, great set. And impen is strong, but I wouldn't put that on my gear, personally.
Yeah. And it's also just not a very fun trait, It's like, I think of it as a quote-unquote dumb trait where, you don't have to do anything to get anything out of it, right? You just have to stand there and take damage, and hopefully it's reducing that damage for you. But I like traits that actually, you have to do something to get a benefit from it, right? Like with Divines, it's giving you more stats of some kind. You have to know what to do with those stats. With Well Fitted, you have to actually be running or be dodging to get benefits out of that. And those types of traits tend to be more powerful, the ones that require you to do something. And it's just more fun to play that way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really nice is that the different armor traits that you can select from are actually pretty meaningful, right? That Zoss has, developed the game to a point where, you can select Sturdy or Impen or Divines or Well Fitted, or even Infused in some cases, to really fit your playstyle, fit your build, and make it, get the most out of it. So it's nice.
Yeah, Infused isn't bad either. I like to do all Divines on my Magicka builds, and I like to do either a mix of Divines and Well Fitted on my Stamina builds, or all Well Fitted on my Stamina builds. That's kind of my go-to trait setups that I've been using.
I'm a big fan of Divines. I really like the versatility it gives, so that, if there's a certain need for penetration or weapon damage or in some cases sustain on a magic tune, you can really just select which Mundus is going to give you what you need for a certain situation. So I really like the versatility of Divines for sure.
Sam just put a screenshot in the chat. He went 19-5 on his Necromancer in a battleground. He's trying out a new bomb build, which he's a little late getting on the bomb train there, Sam. That ship has sailed. It's all Oakensoul now. He was complaining earlier because he's like, man, I can't get my bomb to land ever. But it seems like he's kind of finding that groove now.
Yeah, and bombs are great too. Necro bombs are required in my opinion when it comes to fighting groups that are just turtling up. The bombs are required to really soften them up and really allow your team to counter bomb, I guess you'd say, or counter attack and actually be successful.
In those like super sweaty pre-mades, that's the only way anybody dies is those bombs. Well, we're kind of getting close to the end here. One little piece of news today, there was a press release put up on ESO's website, the official website. They announced the upcoming DLCs. This is going to be update 35. It's called The Lost Depths. So this will be the Q3 DLC. It's a dungeon pack like always, like every Q3. And we don't have much info on that, but they do say there's going to be some balance adjustments. There's going to be some changes to the combat system, they say. I'm very curious to see what that's going to be. Probably a corrosive armor nerf, I'm expecting, of some kind. And they also say this is when they're going to start implementing these Battlegrounds mini events. Like the example they gave was earning bonus AP on the weekends and that kind of stuff. The actual patch is supposed to go live on PC August 22nd, and then that'll be September 2nd on consoles. Or I'm sorry, September 6th on consoles. I made a typo there. So I'm really hoping that those BG mini events ends up being more than just bonus AP, because I already have like Infinity AP. That's not much of an enticement for me, but that might entice people who don't normally play a lot of Battlegrounds to start jumping in there. Maybe that'll improve the overall player population over time, and then maybe we can address the queue situation then, now that more people are queuing up. But more transmutes. That's what we need. We need more transmutes for playing Battlegrounds. That's the real thing.
Definitely more transmutes. Give us some costumes. Give us some polymorphs. Give us some mounts. Give us something cool to show off for our time in BGs and other PvP sources. Give us more. Give us more of those bonuses that you get during Mid-Year Mayhem. Make that more often throughout the year. Once a quarter, once every 2 months or something. Because those events really drive, and those rewards really drive folks to try out PvP. And one of the biggest things that that ZOS did was, at least on PCNA, the servers have been performing really, really well. Last week I was in Greyhost, which is the main Cyrodiil campaign here at PCNA, and I played all night. I was on screen with 50 plus folks, a couple times, and there was absolutely no lag whatsoever. So whatever ZOS did to help out with the servers, it's been great.
We talked about that a couple episodes ago. It was hilarious. Did you keep up with that on the forums, like when they were talking about that? Because they gave everyone a heads up, like, hey, we're going to replace some server hardware. Just giving everyone a heads up that we're doing this thing. This will not impact performance, so don't get excited about that. It's just something we got to do. There's going to be some downtime while we do it. And so they did that. They replaced the server hardware. And when the game came back online, Cyrodiil just magically works now. They just fixed it by accident. They didn't even know that they were fixing it.
Right. And funny. It's just a really good sign that it looks like ZOS is really, trying to, cater to the PvP community a little bit, right? So our biggest complaints before were, performance. They've sort of fixed that, right? And now they're thinking about special events over the weekends for BGs, for other areas of the game, for PvP. So it's looking like they're going in the right direction, and hopefully there's more, new content that come out, maybe next year or something like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to all that good stuff.
Yeah, I am glad that they're turning their attention to Battlegrounds at least. I do hope that these Battlegrounds events end up being something like they try different stuff besides just bonus AP. I was really hoping that they would do something like like a deathmatch weekend where like on some weekend the only mode available is deathmatch, and then we go back to random on Monday or whatever. Stuff like that would be cool, but just the fact that they're focusing their attention on it in any way is a good thing, I think.
The system's there, right? So they should take advantage of it, right? They've built really great places to PvP. They just need to utilize that resource and that asset much more.
Yes, I agree. So anyway, yeah, that patch is set to go live on PC on August 22nd, but the public test server goes live this coming Monday. So we'll actually be able to start checking out these proposed balance changes and combat changes and those sorts of things in less than a week from now. So we'll definitely be talking about those sweet patch notes on the next episode. So look forward to that. Shout out to Uncle Sam in the chat, our one chat participant. Thanks for joining us, Sam. Always a pleasure. Also, another shout out to Sam and King Nar and our friend Brandon for just grouping up with us and doing some awesome PvP. We had some really great times, especially the Imperial City squad. Man, that was just, we got to do that again soon. That was a really great squad. So fun. So shout out to you guys. Thank you very much. If anyone listening would like to send us an email, you can email us at scrollandpodcast@gmail.com. Any questions, any suggestions for the show, things you want to hear us talk about, you can tell us a joke, you can just say hello, whatever you want. Scrollandpodcast@gmail.com is the place to go. We have a guild. The guild's name is Stoon's Goons, best named guild on the server, and also the official guild of the Scrolland Podcast. If you want to be a member of Stoon's Goons, you can email us at scrollandpodcast@gmail.com. I'll send you an invite. If your guild roster is full, no big deal. You can join the Discord instead. And really, that's the true home of the guild anyway. That's where we are always talking and sharing ideas and joking around and stuff. And anyone who's in the Discord, in my book, they're a goon. That's just how it is. So scrollandpodcast@gmail.com if you want to be in the guild or in the Discord or both, however you want to do it. Skoomah, thanks again for being here, man. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yeah, I've been a fan for a very long time, Kat, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Let's do it again. I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.